Hello, my sleepless dreamers. Tonight we're drifting into a half-finished myth, a place where muses doze off mid-poem, turtles judge your life choices, and epic heroes forget what they were supposed to be doing. If you love slow, whimsical history wrapped in soft starlight and gentle sarcasm, you're exactly where you belong. Tap subscribe with the grace of a half-awake philosopher and tell us in the comments, where are you listening from, and what time is it in your corner of the world? Now, let the scrolls unroll and the dreams begin. You find yourself on a hill in ancient Boeotia, where the grass smells faintly of thyme and the cicadas are holding their nightly poetry slam. The air is thick with lavender and dust, like someone tried to clean but gave up halfway through. In the distance, the olive trees look like they're leaning into the gossip of the wind, and a sleepy goat watches you like it knows all your secrets. You're walking toward the slope of Mount Helicon, a mountain so modest it barely qualifies as a mountain, more of a confident hill, really. But don't tell the locals that. To them, it's sacred ground, blessed by the Muses, those divine daughters of Zeus who inspire art, music, and the occasional midlife crisis in marble. Tonight, though, only one muse matters: Calliope, the muse of epic poetry, the one who's supposed to whisper brave deeds into the ears of heroes. But let's just say she's having an off night. She's supposed to be crafting a stirring ballad, something involving a war, a shipwreck, and a god with a temper problem. But instead, she's fallen asleep mid-rhyme, quill in hand, draped over a scroll like a toga on laundry day. And you, dear traveler, are left to wander the edges of her dream. This is not a heroic epic. It's not even a proper tragedy. It's a story that sort of floats, meanders, and then takes a nap. You probably won't make it through this day, because, let's be honest, even Calliope didn't. Before we sink any deeper into olive oil-scented history, take a second to gently tap that like button with the softness of a philosopher petting a cat. Subscribe if you haven't already, and maybe leave a comment with your location and local time so Calliope can see where her poetry is putting people to sleep. Now, let's ease into tonight's journey. You hear soft reeds playing down by the spring of Hippocrene, said to be formed when Pegasus, the winged horse, kicked a rock out of sheer poetic frustration. The water sparkles in the dusk light, rippling like a poem you forgot halfway through. You feel the marble steps beneath your bare feet, still warm from the sun, and the smell of figs overripe on the branch carries a sweetness that almost makes up for the fact that your sandals are too tight. Somewhere nearby, a temple maid is reciting the entire genealogy of Hesiod's gods for fun, and maybe as a cure for insomnia. She gets to the 4th generation of sky deities before even the priest nods off. And here's your major fact for the night. The Muses weren't just poetic cheerleaders. They were invoked at the start of every serious work, from Homer's Odyssey to your average tragic play. Without them, nothing got written, not even shopping lists. Historians still debate whether this was spiritual reverence or just a convenient excuse for procrastination. A weird tidbit. The Greeks believed the Muses lived in a valley called the Pierian Spring, and drinking from it gave you divine knowledge. But get this, too much muse juice and you just start rambling like a caffeinated philosopher. You sit now by a cracked column, moss-covered and listing like a tired thought. The stars above you begin to blink into the sky like lazy punctuation marks, and the muse sighs in her sleep. Somewhere, a lyre hits a slightly wrong note, and no one minds. Welcome to the poem that never finished. You wake, if one can wake inside a muse's dream, to the sound of soft footsteps and a breeze that smells faintly of myrrh and burnt goat cheese. Breakfast in ancient Greece was rarely glamorous. And whoever invented the phrase breakfast of champions clearly never met barley mush and olives with a side of cold stares from your neighbor's donkey. You're still somewhere near Mount Helicon, but the scene has shifted slightly, like a painter who got distracted halfway through the background. The columns here are less ruined, the statues a little less judgmental. Calliope's dream is reconstructing old Boeotia, smoothing the marble, repainting the frescoes, politely ignoring how many amphorae have been turned into flower pots. As you stroll through the agora, or what feels like a half-remembered version of one, voices mumble around you in hexameter, conversations unfolding like badly translated epics. One man is loudly comparing himself to Achilles because he stubbed his toe. Another swears he saw Hermes last week at the fish market, carrying eels. The Muse hums softly in her sleep now, and the melody seeps into the cracks of her fading poem. You pass a scribe seated cross-legged on a stone bench, writing something he believes will change the world. Spoiler, it's a recipe for lentil stew. Tonight's major historical fact is this: epic poetry wasn't just entertainment, it was considered a public service. The ancient Greeks believed their myths were part history, part spiritual GPS, guiding them through the chaos of life with tales of gods, monsters, and impressive hair. Poets were honored, but also expected to make sense of plagues, storms, and why that one guy keeps shouting in the marketplace. Now here's a little-known tidbit for you. Some Orphic sects believe that sleeping with a piece of parchment under your pillow, especially one inscribed with verses, could summon the Muse in your dreams, which is either deeply mystical or a really ancient version of sleeping next to your to-do list. You wander past a fountain, its water gurgling like it's trying to tell you a secret, but keeps forgetting the punchline. A turtle perches awkwardly on a step, glaring at passers-by with the energy of someone who thinks everyone else is doing life incorrectly. Remember that cracked column you sat on earlier? Well, it's back. Only now it's perfectly whole, and someone has set a basket of dates beside it, as if to say, yes, this poem is sponsored by snacks. Historians still debate whether the Muses were meant to be literal or symbolic, or if they were simply a polite way for ancient authors to say, "Don't blame me if this epic goes off the rails." Calliope stirs slightly in her sleep. Her quill, still clutched in her hand, draws an invisible line across the sky above you, like she's half-heartedly underlining a metaphor. The stars above shift again, and one of them definitely winks. And now you, gentle traveler of dreams and dusty marketplaces, follow the echo of sandals on sun-warmed stone as the story shuffles onward. You follow the path where the wind walks first, down through a grove of laurel trees whose leaves shimmer like they're whispering compliments to each other. There's a scent of crushed herbs and wet clay in the air, the kind of smell that makes you wonder if someone nearby is making perfume or just trying to clean a wine stain with basil. Ahead, the landscape rearranges again, not sharply, just subtly, like someone's gently editing reality with a sleepy hand. Columns rise that weren't there a moment ago. A marble staircase now leads to nowhere, but it's the prettiest nowhere you've ever seen. Welcome to the inside of Calliope's unfinished poem, where architecture is mostly vibes. You arrive at a small open-air amphitheater, stone benches worn smooth by centuries of uncomfortable sitting. A chorus of young performers stands center stage, dramatically reenacting the myth of Orpheus. You catch them mid-melodrama. Orpheus is weeping, Eurydice is fainting, and someone in the back is clearly mouthing the wrong lines. The Muse's dream logic allows for such inconsistencies. It's art. Here's tonight's historical fact. Greek theatre wasn't just for entertainment, it was civic duty. Funded by wealthy citizens and attended by everyone from philosophers to fishermen, it was where you learned your myths, absorbed your morals, and quietly judged your neighbor's sandals. And yes, the tragic chorus was basically the ancient equivalent of a group chat. Loud, emotional, and always interrupting. Now, the obscure tidbit. Actors in ancient Greece wore massive masks with exaggerated expressions and built-in megaphones, part performance tool, part ancient noise-cancelling headset. It helped project their voices, but also made them look like startled owls in togas. The effect was apparently very moving, or very confusing. Historians are still deciding. The amphitheater shifts. A breeze stirs the edge of the stage, and suddenly the scene freezes mid-gesture. Orpheus stays paused in the universal pose of, "Wait, don't go," an expression usually reserved for tragic lovers or people watching their sandwich fall. From somewhere above, you hear Calliope's breath catch just briefly, as if she's almost waking, or perhaps remembering a line she meant to write but forgot. Her dream softens again. The audience in the stone benches fades away like chalk in the rain. You move toward the back of the theater, through an arch that somehow opens into a meadow. The grass is ankle-high and full of sleepy bees who are too busy pollinating to care that you nearly stepped on their lunch. Somewhere, a sheep bleats in protest, possibly at the terrible stage direction. And that street you walked past earlier? It's here too, impossibly. But now there's a lyre shop on the corner and a bakery selling honeyed bread that smells exactly like poetic ambition. You wouldn't think ambition had a smell, but here we are. The poem continues, line by uncertain line, as the muse dreams and dreams, and your footsteps sink deeper into the story. You wander farther into the soft folds of Calliope's mind, where time loses its rhythm and everything smells faintly of sun-warmed scrolls and goat milk. The path ahead coils lazily, as if even it can't be bothered to arrive anywhere quickly. This is not a journey of urgency. This is a slow meander through a half-remembered stanza. Now you're passing through what appears to be a symposium, though it's less of a formal gathering and more of a drowsy wine picnic. Reclining men in linen chitons argue about whether the soul has weight, while one of them gently pets a cat that clearly doesn't belong to anyone. Platters of figs, almonds, and barely touched cheese lie scattered like philosophical offerings to the god of light snacking. A flute plays nearby, badly, not terrible, just enthusiastic. You can't see the musician, but based on the performance, you imagine he's either very drunk or a firm believer that passion trumps talent. He is wrong, but adorably so. Tonight's major historical fact. The symposium wasn't just a party, it was the think tank of ancient Greece. Ideas were debated, poetry was recited, and politics were dissected over cups of watered-down wine. Women were generally excluded, except for heterae, who were often smarter than the rest of the room, but had the courtesy to pretend otherwise. Sometimes. And here's a weird cultural nugget. Ancient Greeks believed hiccups during a symposium meant you were falling in love, or that you'd made a philosophical error. This led to a lot of blushing and very nervous silences. Also, a fair amount of incorrect theories on love and digestion. Someone nearby gestures at you with a wine cup and slurs something like, "Tell us your philosophy." But in Calliope's dream, your voice doesn't quite work. You're not here to speak. You're here to drift. You spot Calliope herself now, not fully formed, more like a watercolor version of a goddess. She's reclining on a cushion of cloud, her ink-stained fingers twitching with half-written lines. Her face is serene, but somewhere behind her eyes you can sense it. That feeling when you've lost your place in a sentence. A muse in the fog of mid-thought. A scroll unfurls nearby with what might be the beginning of a heroic tale. Something about a warrior who forgot why he left home, and a sword that talks too much. But then it trails off into doodles of birds and sandals. Classic dream logic. You rest against the trunk of an olive tree, gnarled and older than some gods. The tree hums with the quiet patience of something that has seen 1,000 forgettable poems come and go. Overhead, the sky has turned the soft grey blue of pre-dawn, though no sun is ever going to rise here. This is a world on pause. And remember the bakery from before? Its scent lingers, sweeter now, as if the bread has turned into metaphor. Maybe everything in this poem is slowly becoming metaphor. Except the cat. The cat is definitely real, and it's now sitting directly in your lap without asking permission. The muse exhales, and the symposium fades like wine spilled on marble. You're still inside the poem, and somehow the silence has begun to rhyme. The sky above you now glows with a kind of dreamlight, not dawn, not dusk, just that soft, in-between hue that makes everything look like a memory. You're walking again, or maybe just floating, through a sleepy courtyard paved with cracked terracotta tiles. The birds are chirping, but lazily, like they're reading off a script written by someone who's very tired of metaphors. A papyrus scroll drifts by on the breeze. You catch a glimpse of the words, and then the hero decided to, before the wind folds the parchment and sails it off like a very fragile kite. Even Calliope's thoughts are procrastinating. You step into what looks like an ancient schoolroom. Stone benches, a wall smeared with faded wax tablet scratches, and a teacher at the front who's attempting to explain Homer using hand gestures and the facial expression of a man who regrets every life choice since breakfast. A group of boys mutter their lines in drowsy unison. Sing, Muse, of the wrath of Achilles. But one of them is clearly mouthing the recipe for lentil soup instead. Again, tonight's historical fact. In classical Greece, education was primarily oral. Students memorized entire epics, word for word, by reciting them over and over. Imagine trying to cram the Iliad using only your ears and your patience. No spark notes, no highlighters. Just you, the poem, and the constant smell of old sandals. Now, for a delightfully odd tidbit. Some Athenian teachers used beeswax balls as both a reward and a punishment. If you performed well, you got a sweet treat. If you misbehaved, you had to chew the wax until your mouth stuck shut. The ancient Greek version of multitasking. The muse stirs again in her sleep. Her dream tugs at the edges, blurring the schoolroom, softening the corners, folding everything into gauzy nostalgia. You blink, and now you're in a vineyard. Of course you are. Grapevines curl around stone columns like they've always lived there. A donkey stands nearby, chewing on something that is absolutely not food. It eyes you, judging, possibly composing haiku. You notice the teacher from earlier is now lounging beneath a fig tree, deep in conversation with a tortoise. Neither of them seems particularly surprised that the other is talking. And that bench you passed in the first section, it's here again, older now, covered in moss. Time doesn't move forward in this poem, it just loops politely. Calliope's quill floats through the air above the vineyard, scribbling faint lines into clouds. She's dreaming again, dreaming of a story that keeps rewriting itself. One moment, it's a battle. The next, it's a nap under a fig tree. Honestly, same. Historians still argue whether the Muse-inspired poets genuinely believed their words were divinely guided, or if "the Muse told me to" was just a very classy way to explain a weird plot twist. You pause. The air is warm, the grapes are overly ripe, and the sky hums with an unspoken lullaby. Even your shadow has decided to sit down. And somewhere deep in the folds of this half-finished myth, the Muse sighs and dreams of endings she'll never write. Now you find yourself near the edge of the dream, where the story starts to unravel, not in panic, but with the quiet contentment of a scroll being gently rolled up for the night. The sky is deeper now, a plush indigo blanket stretched across the heavens, stitched with stars that twinkle like punctuation marks in a very sleepy sentence. You walk through a grove of cypress trees, tall and still, like librarians guarding the last quiet shelf in the cosmos. Each step is cushioned by a thick bed of pine needles and ancient dust. The air is filled with the scent of resin and ink, the smell of half-finished poems and candle smoke curling around forgotten ideas. Calliope's presence feels thinner now. She's not gone, just drifting, like the thought you lose right as you open your mouth to speak. Her quill hovers mid-air, trembling slightly, as if considering a final word before thinking, maybe tomorrow. You arrive at a small marble altar low to the ground, surrounded by offerings from across the dream, a dried fig, a tiny terracotta muse, a scrap of papyrus with only the word "and" written on it. Classic Calliope, always leaving you on a conjunction. Here's tonight's final historical note. Muses weren't just inspirational, they were protective. Poets, philosophers, even mathematicians invoked them not just for brilliance, but for safety and thought. The idea being, if you got too close to divine knowledge, it was best to have a celestial chaperone. And for our final oddity, in some later folk traditions, people believed that sneezing while writing poetry meant the muse had passed through your body. Whether to bless you or just check in was never entirely clear. Scholars still disagree on whether this was symbolic or just a very poetic allergy. And remember the turtle from earlier? He's here again, sitting perfectly still at the edge of the altar, staring at the sky like he's waiting for an epilogue. You join him in silence. Calliope's dream settles. The scrolls curl inward. The amphitheater, the symposium, the bakery, all of it softens like the last note of a lullaby that didn't quite rhyme. The poem was never meant to finish. That was the point. And now, dear listener, let's slowly begin to wind down together. You find a quiet place beneath an olive tree, one you've seen before, though you couldn't say from where. The bark is smooth beneath your fingers, and the branches above sway gently, like a hand rocking the cradle of the sky. The stars drift now, slower than before. Their shimmer is dulled to a sleepy pulse, like fireflies deciding whether to keep glowing or just call it a night. A breeze moves through the grass in long, unhurried sighs, carrying the scent of night flowers and old parchment. You lean back, eyes half-lidded, and feel the warmth of the marble beneath you, still holding on to the memory of the sun. The muse is silent now. Her quill has stopped moving, resting beside her like a pet that finally tired of chasing metaphors. The scrolls are all blank, gently rolled and stacked. Nothing left to write, no endings to chase. Just the feeling of something sacred having passed by, softly, and then gone. Even the cat has curled into a tight little spiral beside you, its purring slower, deeper, as if dreaming its own dream within the muses. The world here is quiet, gentle, in no rush, and neither are you. Let the shadows settle into your breath. Let your thoughts drift into the stillness between words. Let the unfinished poem wrap around you, not as a story, but as a sigh. You don't need a last line. You don't need to understand it all. You are exactly where the muse left off, and that is enough. Good night, dreamer.